The Minimum Wage Act of 2019, which made 30,000 naira the least pay for workers in Nigeria, expired in April 2024. By law, the act should be reviewed every 5 years to meet with contemporary economic demands of workers. The removal of subsidy in May 2023 led to a rise in cost of commodities, and transportation was not excluded. The citizens cried, and organized labor threatened a showdown as it called for a review of the minimum wage. By January 2024, President Bola Tinubu inaugurated a 37-member tripartite committee to negotiate a new minimum wage for workers. The committee comprises representatives of federal government and states on one hand, as well as the private sector and organized labor on the other. It took a while before the committee began its sitting, and organized labor kicked. It accused government of buying time and exposing workers to hardship. The Trade Union Congress tabled 497,000 naira as minimum wage. On Wednesday, 15th May, the first major meeting on minimum wage ended in a stalemate as the workers rejected government's offer of 48,000 naira. A week after, on the 22nd of May, Labour turned down government's offer of 54,000 naira. Another deadlock on the 28th of May, as the Nigeria Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress rejected government's 60,000 naira minimum wage. On June 3rd, both trade unions began a national strike over the tripartite committee's failure to agree on a new minimum wage and hike in electricity tariffs. President Bola Tinubu's commitment of a wage higher than 60,000 naira led to the suspension of the industrial action as organized labor returned to the negotiation table. The Secretary to the Government of the Federation, George Akume, led the talks. On the 7th of June, the government and organized private sector agreed to 62,000 naira, while labor insisted on 250,000 naira. Nigerian workers, through their leaders, insisted on earning a living wage as against a slave wage. In the midst of these negotiations, state governors grumbled. The resolution of the tripartite committee moved all eyes to President Bola Tinubu, who was expected to send a bill to the National Assembly on a new wage. Desirous to avoid another stalemate, President Bola Tinubu engaged in further consultations with organized labor before the bill on a new wage is sent to the Parliament. Thursday's agreement to 70,000 naira new minimum wage paves the way for the executive to dispatch the new minimum wage bill to the National Assembly.
Right, let's talk this through by speaking with the MD CEO, Exitom Consulting Limited, Adeyemi Ajayi, who is joining us in the studio. Thank you so much for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Good morning.
I remember that we've talked about this, over and over again. And here we are, 70,000 naira after the haggling from 250,000, I think 614 or thereabouts, where the labor union started from. And then they brought it down to 250,000, and now here we are, 70,000 naira. Did it meet your expectation?
I'll say below my expectation.
Really?
Yeah, because I was expecting it to be pegged at around 100,000 minimum because of the economic situation of Nigeria. And even then, I was just being very conservative, because if we have to go by reality, it's far more than that. It should be in the range of 150, 200, looking at the cost of items, inflation. I mean, by my own calculation, I do not expect inflation to come down sooner, at least Q3 this year, no. Maybe Q4 we may be getting there, but Q3 not likely. But again, it is what it is. The labor knew or knows the reason why they agree on 70, but I'll say for me, my opinion.
Have you considered ability to pay? Because, 250,000, 100,000, even some are still defaulting, to paying 30,000 naira minimum wage. We know some states who have not even honored that of the 30,000 naira minimum wage. So if you're saying that it falls below your expectations, then did you put into consideration those states that may not be enabling enough to pay?
Yeah, I'll say that if I put that into consideration, maybe that would be a basis. Before we had the local government autonomy, the state were in control of, payment of salaries for all workers. So if you ask me, with the local government coming on board, we also start talking about multi-party parties here on the negotiation table. And in terms of affordability, I would say, well, government will be able to afford 70 as against 100.
Government, federal government, state government?
Federal, states, local government. Because I believe one of the things this will lead into is to increase allocation for the state, probably. But states should also look for means of generating their own revenue, even as far as the local government. You know, local governments have means of generating revenue, states have means of generating revenue. They should just step this up in order to meet these expectations. But in reality, I foresee struggle, especially at the local government. I mean, they are just coming out newly. There is a battle, subtle battle, between the federal government and the state about this local government autonomy. So the direction is still not clear, despite the pronouncement. So there will be struggle, kind of, in terms of affordability.
And, you know, many have also mentioned the fact that apart from having financial autonomy, they also need to have political autonomy to take them out of, you know, the grip of some of these state governors. But let's take it back to what we are discussing. Let's break down the 70,000 Naira and how much of, you know, how much it will really do in the Nigerian economy, in the life of the average Nigerian. When you look at the rising cost of living, the standard of living, and having to review it in 3 years, we have a 3-year gap to expect another change. How far-reaching is 70,000 Naira be? Well, that's the minimum, anyways.
That's the minimum. Absolutely. But I want to tell you that I don't think that would take too far before the heat comes in. What I mean by the heat, let's look at the reality on ground. Why I said it fell below my expectation is, let's do a simple calculation. A family of a father, mother, and 4 children, okay? Let's do the calculation. If the father eats food 1,000 Naira per day, which we know is just like you're being extremely conservative. If the father eats 1,000 Naira per day, the mother 1,000 Naira per day, in a month, 60,000 is gone. Are the children going to starve? You get my point.
Yeah, but then you are being paid based on what you do, not based on the number of families that
children that you have.
No, we're talking about how, I mean, economically valuable it is for people. You get my point.
Is it proper to look at it through that prism? Because what you do, what you give is what you're being remunerated upon. So if you're looking at it that way, then it's faulted. It should be based on, okay, you that are doing the job, receiving the money, let's say you, yourself, and 1 kid, for instance. Just saying, because people will argue that we are not paying you based on the number of families that you have.
Absolutely. But you see, pay is based on need. If you want to hire me now, and you tell me you're going to pay me 1 million Naira, and it's not going to cover my need, I'm not going to take the job.
That's right.
Do you agree with me? Mm-hmm. Now, apart from that, if we go further to say that is a factor for many people, ability to take care of themselves and their family is a major factor in negotiation. Now, going further is to also look at what are the bases of payment. There's something in human resource we call the value of job, like job valuation. In job valuation, we have discovered, based on research, that most workers are probably paid far lesser than what they should be earning. That's the truth. Because if you look at what you contribute to an organization, in terms of revenue generation or saving cost, it's just a fraction of that you are being paid, considering that there are so many other factors. Running costs, operational costs for the organization. So if we look at it as based on what you've done, that's what you should be paid. You should be earning very fat, salary. However, if we look at economic realities, then there are a lot of adjustments that will come in. But major factor for any employee is how will this money be of value to me? That's why I'm looking at it from that point of view. If you're paying me and it's not taking care of my needs, there are so many things that will happen.
So talking about the economic realities that may follow after, the approval of this minimum wage, the private sectors this morning on the papers were saying that they may not be able to afford that 70,000 Naira without the federal government's help. Do you foresee probably an increase in downsizing in the private sector?
Private sector, yes, probably. Why I said that is now, you're aware a lot of organizations are leaving the Nigerian economy. Cost of running business in Nigeria is increasing. You know, now if you take a typical organization, the cost of fueling, cost of operational cost within it has gone up by about 400%. Now, if we look at that for the private sector, that may be the point from which they are looking at it and say, we can't afford this. But the support they're asking from the government is not that the government should give them subvention. No government will do that to the private sector. But they're expecting government to create an enabling environment for them, in order to bring down cost of operation and also give incentives, in order to help them to survive in business. Looking at various tax policies, looking at various initiatives, interventions that can help, even driving down the foreign exchange. So all these factors are very important. I think that is what the private sector is asking for.
I'm thinking the impact of this new national minimum wage would have on the economy in general, because we've spoken to some people who said that they were actually waiting for the minimum wage to be agreed upon, and then would decide the prices of goods and services. So people have been saying the higher the money, the higher inflationary experience we'll be having. Do you feel that that's going to be what we'll be experiencing going forward? Because even the crate of egg is now being sold for almost more than 5,000 naira now.
Yeah, for me, with 70,000 naira, I don't think a reasonable person will want to shoot up the price or cost of anything.
Isn't that what has always happened?
Yeah, that is what has always happened. Let's do a kind of variance analysis now. Or what if? What if it's 120? Now that is 170. The rate at which cost of items will go up, if it's 120, will be higher than now that is 70. So one way or the other, it may be a measure to curtail the inflationary trend we are currently facing. But would there be increment? Yes, but not too significant. Not too significant because the rate of increment is, not that significant, if I would say. But we have a national psyche.
Not that significant. 30,000 to 70,000 naira is a whole lot of money. 40,000 naira in between is a whole lot of money.
Oh, well, let's do the dollar conversion.
But we don't spend dollar in Nigeria.
But dollar determines our economy.
An American, I can eat with 1,000 naira to my feel, in some cases. An American can't eat with a dollar. So do you not feel it's actually misplaced, what's it called? Calculation or comparison to say that, okay, $1, or saying that, okay, this is a dollar, this is the naira. It's quite, different or fine. Dollarization of the economy, which we've been advocating to, always look away from.
Okay, you see why I say let's look at it from the dollar point of view. A lot of times when we do economic valuation, we consider this currency as a major factor. That is why we call it like we run a petrodollar economy. You get my point? Now, if you run a petrodollar economy, you start looking at the value of items from the stronger currency relatively. That's why I'm using that. But again, let's come back to the question that you asked about, okay, it's significant. If you look at 70,000 naira last year and 70,000 naira now, what 70,000 naira would afford, what you could buy for 70,000 naira last year, probably you may be buying it at around 15,000 naira or 20,000 naira this year.
Is that bad?
Absolutely. And I can do some calculations for you. Let's do a rebase. And that is why I would say let's peg it at $1. If you are buying an item last year for 500 naira, this year that item is 1,500 if you are importing. You get my point? By the time you add all that cost, it will be going like 4 times. So that is why I said that it has reduced by about 75% loss of value. That is why crate of egg last year, you were probably buying for 2,000 naira. But now it's about 5,000 plus. A lot of factors come into this. We are facing cost-infected, let me use that word, inflation at the moment. So there are so many things that needed to be addressed. Even as we have increased this minimum wage, we should try as much as possible not to lose the value of this 70,000 naira. I think the government should work towards that.
That's right.
And there are actually fears that, in 3 years, that 70,000 naira may not be as as will I call it, relevant at that time. But let's look at enforcement. There has always been a problem of enforcing this, even in state. We're having this discussion, and we don't even know some states are not, are not even paying whatever they have currently, the current minimum wage. The NLC president has the legal right to evoke the minimum wage law. But despite this, we still see some states falling short. Some of them will mention that they do not have enough IGR, they do not have enough resources to, source, and they have to, get as much allocation from FARC. So let's look at how likely is it for states to actually comply if they do not have. That's one. And there are also persons who, say they are not earning salaries. How is that going to benefit them?
Okay, you see, the two questions about affordability for states, compliance. The NLC at the state level should have conversation with each state and see. There are backlogs for some states. Yeah, even for the 30,000 naira. Now that we have increased to 70,000 naira, it's going to be more difficult for them. And that is the point where they'll come and tell you and say, we can't afford it. And because they had backlogs.
But do you think that will be the case now? Because it's actually based on consultations. The tripartite committee, the government was government was involved, talking about state governments, the federal government, the organized labor, and all of that. So should anyone still come out and say we can't afford it?
No, we can all agree on this table. But when it gets to reality, it's a different ball game. That is when the state government will come and tell you some other stories. And that is what we've seen in the past year. So I expect one way or the other, negotiation should go beyond this conclusion. It should stretch to the state level for compliance. And compliance now should not be done with, a fight. It should be done more with continuous conversation and see how and when government will have to implement this. Now, to the second question around, if I'm not earning salary, how does it affect me? Now, how does it affect me in terms of earning money? I will increase my fee because probably I'm pegging my value to value of somebody earning salary. So I'll ask myself.
And so you are supporting his claim of saying that some persons are waiting for this minimum wage to be increased for them to increase the prices of their goods and services.
Yeah, but I'm saying you wouldn't go too significant. You remain within the ambit of the increment. So if, for example, I'm not earning salary, I work in the unorganized sector, the question I still ask myself is, what are the factors affecting my living? And let me also compare myself with someone probably that is earning salary. Let's live the same life. I may not rank equally to him, but one way or the other, I will have a sentiment of getting close to him, at least in the scheme of things.
So let's take this conversation to the common man, to the street. 3 days ago, I was somewhere around Ilepo, following the closure of that market. I saw some people who were actually having a conversation, someone coming out of the market saying that, look at me, I just bought jute leaves, saying that I bought it 200 naira, just a bunch of it. Originally, it was meant to be sold 100 naira. As a matter of fact, the person who sold the jute leaves said that, look at it, we can sell it for 100 naira. But the association will definitely come and pick, they will arrest me for selling it 100 naira. So they mandated us to sell it to 100 naira. And this takes us to Osun State, where Ooni of Ife, banned any market associations due to, indiscriminate increase of prices of commodities and all of that. How do you think Nigerians are actually, how much do you think we are doing to inflict more pains on ourselves? Because, okay, if you talk about petrodollar, I don't know how that affects how that affects Gary, how that affects things that we produce, commonly in our household. So do you feel that there is need for us to have a control, price control mechanism to be put in place across the nation?
Absolutely. And I love the last statement, price control mechanism. We need to put that in place. FCCPC now should step up their games. We have a psyche, national psyche that I call national grid. Grid as in GREED. That national grid comes from what comes from me first. I don't care what goes to other people. And to a very large extent, the analogy you gave is what happens in many places. We have seen cases even in the media where some people want to sell item at certain rates, people in the market will say, don't sell it. Because, you know, we have to make gain. Now, don't blame those people that ask not to sell it. They may be buying from different sources, okay? And, of course, if you buy cheaper, I may buy more expensive.
But then that's your business. It's competitive. It's a competitive world. The woman said, if I sold this thing 100 Naira, I already made my gain. Absolutely. So why are they mandating me to sell it for 400?
I bought it for 100 Naira, and I want to sell. I will have to sell for 200.
So that is still, it is still competitive.
Absolutely. But let me tell you what happened in the market, a typical market. Yeah. You see, there is what we call market information, local market information. You know, I know that you are selling it for 200. I will also put up my price. Now, apart from the fact that it's competitive, that competitive is controlled within their system, mind you. It's controlled because they have market officers that will move and say, hey, don't sell your own for 100 Naira. We know you bought it cheaper. It's 200 that this person is selling. So there is a way they put that. Now, you mentioned something very critical. We are, to some extent, our own problems. We are our own problems because we want to take advantage of every situation. We want to take advantage because we believe if we do that, it will be of advantage to us as individuals. But we don't think of collective interests. We think of individual interest. And that has been one of the major causes of national greed in this country. That should be addressed. We need psyche around discipline. And we need government agencies who are in charge of price control to step up their game, go to supermarkets, go to several stores. They should make sure that prices of items are controlled.
And along with this conversation about the minimum wage, we've also had, talks about the productivity of the average Nigerian worker, the welfare of the average Nigerian worker. And now that we are talking about the fact that 70,000 Naira may not be enough, does it seem like the step in the right direction when we're talking about the welfare of the worker? The average Nigerian worker will still have to go to the market, will still have to use electricity, will still have to feed, buy clothes and other things. Does it seem like this will really affect the average civil servant in Nigeria?
Absolutely. It's going to affect everybody. It's going to affect the rich, the poor, the middle class, everybody. And what people need now is what I call financial discipline. Don't buy what you don't need. Because what you need already is already swallowing your resources. So you have to really tone down on so many things. Now, you mentioned something very critical. What impact will they have on welfare and productivity? You see, if I don't have money to eat enough to come to work, I'm telling you the truth, my productivity will not be up to your expectation. Because, there is a balance in Yoruba that it's when you have, you are fed well that you can energize yourself. But if I'm not fed well, you're expecting me to be productive, I will pretend that I have fainted. And we'll start by you giving me food before I continue. So they are all connected.
Interesting stuff. But then, so the new minimum wage had been, it is long overdue. So before now, are you seeing it as they will definitely start paying this money, not from, starting from next month or the end of this month? Do you think they will have to pay it, in a manner of arrears, because starting from when it was meant to be paid? Is that what you see or foresee to happen?
I don't foresee it happening that way. It expired in April this year. It was supposed to take effect from May. We're in July. We're going into August. I don't think that arrears will be paid. My thinking is this. You see, there have been a lot of journey here. And if government has to go back to PRS, it may put some pressure. If I thought they are going to pay the arrears, it may not be immediate. An immediate thing. So let's say it expired in April, and the government wants to pay arrears. Governments will have pressure if they have to take off that immediately. So if you ask me when is the likely time that this may be implemented or start implementation, maybe Q3. We are already in Q3 now, towards the end of Q3 or early Q4, because there will be a lot of consideration adjustments, cash flow management, private sector, government, looking for resources and all that. So I don't think Labour should even expect something immediate. But again, Labour may ask that pay arrears. That's another conversation entirely.
So now that we're having this conversation about the state labor unions meeting with the governors, to have a discussion on viability and affordability of states to pay that amount, perhaps this is the time we should also be looking at, internally generated revenue. I'm very concerned about even the local government and how they will be able to, afford this amidst this whole autonomy saga. We know that the local government can raise funds through the market, through little forms of levies and maybe not taxations that should go to the state government. But what's going to be the fate of state governors that, have not been able to key into making as much in their revenue?
Okay, I think one of the problems we've had in the past that we still have it now is that most people who come into administration as governors don't focus on internally generated revenue in terms of strengthening that. Lagos State, Rivers States are some of the states, or probably Kano States maybe, that focus on internally generated revenue. Some other states, in fact, most states rely on allocation. Personally, I think that allocation at times should be controlled, because if you keep giving people things and they think is a free money, let me use that, it may not give them that strength to apply initiatives. There is no state in the Federal Republic of Nigeria that has no potential to generate revenue. It's the ability to think through it. There is no state. We are blessed with natural resources. We are blessed with so many things. Tourism. There's hardly any state you mention in Nigeria that they don't have something like a tourist attraction. Okay? We can generate money from tourism, but after some time, we abandon those courses. There are a lot of things that people could do. We have huge potentials in agriculture. I personally worked on 14 crops or commodities in Nigeria that can generate us huge money. But what we have, we don't do value addition. We don't even pay attention there. You know how many honey colonies we have lost in Nigeria in the last 5 years? Do we pay attention to things like that?
Right. Very quickly, there is some Nigerians actually calling for massive protests across the nation. And then the police, the government, and everyone had been trying to talk them out of it because of the experience that we had during the NSAS protest and all of that. And we are still reeling from the impact of the NSAS. Do you think it is really, really needed, especially at this time when the administration has not even mature enough to get to a level where we can say we can fully appraise it? What say you very quickly to this?
Okay, very quickly. Personally, my advice is, what will the protest do? What will be the outcome of the protest at the end of the day? Negotiation should precede protest. There's no negotiation we're going to protest. On what basis? And I'll quickly say that eventually some life may be lost and nothing, at the end of the day, the common man who joins the protests may not even know the cause. Some people use the protest as platform to become popular.
That's right.
Some of these people calling for protests, ask them, have you advanced your cause? Have you called government's attention in a way? Personally, I would advise that is not the right thing to do. Look for the proper channel. Pass your message across to the government. I am telling you the truth. This government inherited some troubles. And it will take them a time. It will take a year or plus or two to clear some things. Yes, there are some policies they issued that are challenging, but I think we should be patient a little. We will get there.
We hope that well-meaning Nigerians will actually, will actually key into the piece of advice that we've actually given out freely, on the show this morning. Thank you very kindly, MD, CEO, Exiton Consulting Limited at DMA Ajayi. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Right.